In my first episode of this EQ series, I talked about why EQ is so powerful, but in this episode, I want to show you how to actually get started making your sound system sound better than anything money can buy. Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan, this is Super Review, and in this episode of Waveguide, I'm going to go over some solutions, both hardware and software solutions that'll give you access to parametric EQ regardless of which platform you're using. If you're on Android, iOS, Windows, or Mac OS, we're going to talk about that, and the goal is that at the end of this video, you're going to be set up and ready to start loading in EQ profiles that later we're going to make on SquigLink. And if you like the idea of helpful content like this, well, a shout out to our sponsor, HiFiGo, who is making Waveguide possible. HiFiGo is an online retailer of audio stuff. They've got audio that is affordable and attainable for everybody. If you want to check them out and support the channel, I've got them linked down below. But with that said, let's dive into these solutions. Okay, here's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. I'm going to start with just an overview of some recommendations that I have for app and hardware solutions that'll give you access to parametric EQ on all of the main platforms that I talked about: Windows, iOS, Android, and Mac OS. And then I'm also going to give you a demonstration of how to use each of them. We're not going to dive into the details of how to make an EQ profile, but you will know how to set each of these things up and be able to load an EQ profile so that when we make an EQ profile in the future, you'll be ready for it. All right, so this table is kind of an overview of the different options that I generally recommend if you're trying to get into parametric EQ, depending on which platform you're using. And let's start by just talking about dongle DACs real quickly. They're products like these, like the Moondrop Free DSP or FiOS JA11. I'll be honest, these are not my favorite solutions, but they are a decent solution that you can pick up for around 15 to 35 bucks. They give you access to a headphone jack and some pretty basic EQ functionality. Generally, the apps for these only work on Android, which is a little bit of a limitation. And then they don't give you the option, at least these ones that I've tried, don't give you the option to import an EQ profile from an external source like SquigLink. So you're going to have to manually input it. But again, nonetheless, it is a functional, useful solution. Some other solutions that I actually think are better and generally going to be cheaper are just EQ apps. So I'll pull this one up as an example. This is Poweramp EQ that you can download in the Android App Store, the Google Play Store. There's another option called Wavelet. That's another popular one out there. And this is good for Android. It's going to be like system-wide EQ, which is really cool. And again, the price is quite cheap. Doesn't work on desktop, doesn't work on iOS, but it does let you import external EQ profiles. And again, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So generally a pretty nice solution. Another solution that I've got loaded up here is the Hiby music app. So this is an app that you can download actually for free inside of the Google Play Store, or if you have a Hiby-based digital audio player, you're going to have this pre-built in. If you're using the free downloaded app, it's not going to be a system-wide EQ, which is a little bit of a limitation. You're going to have to listen to your music through the Hiby app. So if you use Spotify, this won't help there. But if you do have a Hiby app that has their EQ built in, it will be system-wide and it will apply to apps like Spotify. Just know that you're going to have to spend like 250 bucks to buy a digital audio player that has that included. This will let you import EQ profiles from an external source like SquigLink, which is pretty nice. And frankly, it's one of the reasons why I actually like this as a solution. Another option is Roon, which I guess I will highlight for you here briefly. This is a fairly popular audiophile focused music app that works across all platforms. The biggest downside with this is that it is a subscription. You have to pay 15 bucks a month for access to it, but you load up in your own music library. It works across all platforms. And while it won't let you import EQ profiles from an external source like SquigLink, you can manually import those profiles or manually input them. And then what's kind of cool about Roon is that it will synchronize those profiles across all of your devices. So that is actually pretty useful. Another product I wanted to talk about is the Qudelix 5K. I don't know if you're familiar with this little guy. It's a Bluetooth dongle DAC. You could also use it as a USB dongle DAC, but it's primarily a Bluetooth device that has really powerful parametric EQ software options. What's nice about this is that it works on Android and iOS, as well as on Windows and Mac OS via a Chrome web extension. You do have to pay for it. It's not the cheapest dongle DAC at 110 bucks, but I think that for the functionality you get from this thing, this is a really, really nice solution. And it'll let you import PEQ profiles from external sources like SquigLink. So because of this, it's like one of my favorite solutions for doing parametric EQ. Another option, and unfortunately this one I don't have locally to show you, but I can show you this. This is the new JDS Element 4. It's a DAC and amplifier made for your desktop computer that has some parametric EQ functionality built into it. Now it's a little bit limited in that you can only load, I think it's like 8 peaking filters and 1 or 2 shelving filters. We'll talk about what that means later. But it is nonetheless a nice option that's going to give you access like a hardware solution on Windows and Mac OS. And you can import profiles from Squiglink, which is pretty cool. It is not cheap, $550, but if you're looking for a nice DAC and amplifier for your desktop setup anyway, seems like a pretty good solution. Again, I haven't used it myself, so I don't know for sure, but I think that's pretty good. Another option on Mac OS specifically, this is actually what I use primarily, is an app called SoundSource. Let me show you. It is this. I'll have it linked in the description down below if you want to check it out. But this is a Mac OS software that costs $45, so not super cheap, but honestly not that expensive. That just gives you access to system-wide EQ. You can load EQ profiles from an external source like Squiglink, and it's just kind of nice and seamless. Like, it's not that janky, which frankly a lot of these EQ softwares can be a little bit on the janky side. And so for that reason, it's kind of my other favorite solution. I'm also happen to be a Mac user. But finally, if you aren't a Mac user, if instead you are a Windows user, you have access to Equalizer APO, which is probably the solution you've heard the most about before in the past. And that's because it's free. So let me pull this up real quick. So this is what Equalizer APO looks like. You can download it on SourceForge. I will have that linked down in the description down below, of course. And it's a little bit on the janky side in terms of the software. I know a lot of people will tell you to download Equalizer APO as well as download another UI called PEQ. For this use, like just loading EQ profiles from Squiglink, you don't actually need to do that. You can just use Equalizer APO, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But yeah, generally like a nice, powerful solution if you happen to be on Windows. So it's like an overview of the different options that you have for PEQ for all the different platforms. But like I promised, I want to give you kind of a walkthrough, initial setup of some of my favorite options so that you're actually ready to start importing EQ profiles once we start making them in a future episode of this series. Now, we don't have an EQ profile right now, but if you want a test EQ profile, I've got a test one linked in the description down below. But just fair warning, it does not sound good. It intentionally sounds bad. But you can download this test profile and walk through these steps with me. And if at the end of it, everything sounds awful, congratulations, you did it right. So the first option I want to walk you through is Poweramp, which again is a nice, affordable, system-wide solution for Android. This isn't going to work for iOS, unfortunately, but if you've got an Android device and you've got like $7, this is a pretty good option. So here's how you do it, right? One, you can download and install the app from the Google Play Store. Assuming you've already got it installed, load up the app and make sure, first of all, that you've got it enabled, right? By default, you might need to click up here to enable it. Once this goes away, you know that the EQ profile is active. Now from here, this UI is frankly a little bit confusing, but if you want to just import an EQ profile, like I mentioned, click down here on this little ... menu. From here, you've got the option to import, and assuming you've got your file saved to the local system, you can just select the file that you want to import, and it's going to automatically import it. Now, it doesn't apply your imported selection right away. What you need to do is then click this preset button down here, which is going to show you all of your presets that you've created, and, well, like we've just done, we've just made this underwater EQ preset, so you can select that, close this, and now you can see that it's previewed down here. So now that you've got the preview of your EQ here, you see that it's got the EQ selected up here and this is gone. Another way you can validate that this is working is pull down your notifications and you should see this little notification letting you know that Poweramp is running. Well, now you've got your EQ profile being applied system-wide to everything on Android through Poweramp, and that is how easy it is. Now, of course, making that EQ profile, that's the hard part. We'll get to that eventually, but just the initial setup, you should be good to go. So the next solution I want to walk you through is Hiby Music, and what's nice about this is that it's actually available as a free download on Android. If you happen to have a Hiby digital audio player, this is going to already be baked into the software. In fact, on a Hiby DAP, you're going to have access to system-wide PEQ, which is pretty nice. But for the free solution for most Android devices, you're going to have to use your own music library, right? So if you're using Spotify, this won't necessarily work for that. But if you've already got your own music library, using the Hiby Music app will let you get parametric EQ on Android. And here's what this looks like. So yeah, the Hiby Music app is something you can just download for free in the Google Play Store. And once you've loaded it up, the UI is actually not bad on here. So basically over here on the left, click on this little user icon, and that's gonna launch this side menu. From here, look for the PEQ option, all right? From the PEQ screen, first of all, you want to make sure that the PEQ is enabled. By default, it might not be enabled. But then once you've got that enabled, another option that you've got here at the top of the screen, in fact, maybe I should just stay zoomed in here at the top, is this import button. So you hit that import button, import from local is going to be the option you click, and then you just navigate to wherever you have downloaded your EQ profiles, where I've got mine here in the download folder. And then once you've got that loaded in there, you should again see a preview of the EQ profile that you've just imported. You can see down here is where you've got the profiles, or sort of the bands, the different filters previewed, but otherwise you're basically ready. As long as this thing is toggled on and you see this preview of your EQ profile, once you start listening to music within the Hiby Music app, that EQ is going to be applied. All right, on to Roon, which is an interesting solution because it's one app that gives you access to parametric EQ on Android, iOS, Windows, and Mac OS. In fact, when you create an EQ profile on any one of these platforms, it automatically gets synchronized with all the others, which frankly is pretty nice. Now, the downsides with Roon are that it is not a system-wide EQ. So if you're trying to play video games and EQ your video games, it's not going to work for that. It's just going to work for the music that you play through Roon. And then the other downside is that it is a subscription service. It costs around 15 bucks a month, but it does other stuff than just EQ. So I don't know, maybe it's worth it for you. But if you want to just do the EQ stuff, here is how you do it. One note is that I could not find the options or the ability to make EQ profiles on a mobile phone, either Android or iOS. But if I'm using a larger display like an iPad or my desktop computer, that's where you have access to the ability to create profiles. And again, once you've created those profiles, they automatically are available on your other devices. Just you're going to have to use one of these devices with a larger screen in order to make them. And here's how you do it. All right, down here in the lower right, you tap the volume icon, and that launches this little menu. And then from here, you tap the squiggly line icon. And that's going to launch this Muse Precision Audio Control screen, which is where we're going to add EQ filters. So over here on the left, click Add Filter. We're going to add a parametric EQ filter, and that'll launch you into this UI, which is where we're going to have to manually input our EQ filter. So when you download like an EQ profile on Squiglink, right, it's going to have a number of EQ filters as part of that profile. And unfortunately, you can't import that file directly here. So you're going to have to manually import those numbers, but it's not that bad. And once you do it again, it synchronizes across platforms, which is kind of nice. So let me show you how to manually input one, right? We're going to recreate that underwater EQ profile that I'm using. We're going to make a filter at 500 hertz. We're going to give it a base or a boost of 1 decibel with a Q factor, 10 decibels with a Q factor of 1. And I'll just highlight down here is where you select which type of filter it is. For this one, we're going to go with a low shelf filter, okay? And then you should see up here, it's going to give you an illustration of what that filter is doing. Let's add a second filter. Actually, I don't know why that started me on band 1, but let's go to band 2. We'll go back to band 1. So this is basically where you can input multiple filters, right? You have different bands that you can attach them to. Let's input our next filter, which we'll do at 3000 hertz. We will do that as a negative 10 decibel gain, and we'll do that with a Q factor of 0.5. For this one, we're going to do a peaking filter instead of a shelf filter. But there we go. And then again, if we scroll back up to the top, we should see this abomination of an EQ profile in effect. Now, one thing to note when you're manually inputting EQ presets like this, you want to also make sure that you're doing negative pregain, right? So I have a 10 decibel bass boost on here. If I don't input a negative pregain, I'm probably going to result in just like severe clipping of the audio, and it will sound quite terrible. So what you want to do with Roon is you just click this and drag it down so that this line is below kind of the baseline. Or basically you're just giving it as much negative pre-gain as your highest gain filter, and that should avoid any sort of clipping issues. Now, once you've got this profile created here, over here on the left, we want to actually save it and make sure that it's accessible across multiple devices. So tap this preset section up here and click Save Preset As. Here's where we can give it a name. We'll call this one Underwater. And now this collection of filters, which for us is just one filter, is saved as the name Underwater. So now if I've done this correctly, I'm going to pull up my iPhone real quick. If I've done this correctly, go into the same section, right? Volume icon, squiggly icon. I should have access to that filter that I just created, and I do. So this is how you can create these profiles on one device, access them across others, and generally how you do parametric EQ with Roon. So the next solution I want to walk you through is the Qudelix 5K, which is this little Bluetooth dongle DAC. This is a nice solution because it works across Android, iOS, Windows, and macOS. Basically any device that has Bluetooth, you can connect to it and use it, or you can also even just connect it out via USB, which is pretty nice as well. In order to upload EQ profiles from Squiglink, you will need to use a web browser rather than the Android and iOS apps. The Android and iOS apps, you can create the profiles manually, kind of the similar way that we just did with Roon. But if you want to upload a profile from Squiglink, you're going to want to use the Chrome extension, which is what I will show you next. All right, let's see over here. So basically, you know, buy the product, find that, get that in your hands. And once you have that, you want to go to the Chrome extension store. You can just Google for this and then look up the Qudelix app and download this Chrome extension. Once you have that, you're going to have a Chrome extension installed, which then gives you access to this UI. Now, what we need to do, so we need to connect this, hold on real quick. I need to connect my Qudelix to my PC. So once you've got the Chrome extension launched and you've got the Qudelix connected to your computer, either via USB or via Bluetooth, you will see that it says connected up here. I know it's behind my head, but I promise it says connected. And then from there, over here on the left, you can select the DSP tab, which is where we're going to upload our EQ profiles. One, make sure that we're on this user EQ tab. Two, make sure that the EQ is enabled over here in this little toggle on the lower right. And then once you've done that, this button will become active. This is an upload button. You click this, it's going to let you select an EQ profile that you've downloaded somewhere else. This is our underwater test EQ profile. And once that's imported, you should see a preview of that EQ that's being applied. So once you see these filters, you've got this toggle enabled. Basically all the sound that's going to be coming out of the Qudelix 5K is going to be processed with these filters. And well, that's a good way to do EQ with the Qudelix 5K. All right, so now here's how you set up and use SoundSource, which is actually the PEQ software that I end up using the most because it's system-wide and it works on Mac OS. It doesn't work for anything else, but if you happen to be a Mac OS user like me, in my opinion, this is the best solution. So here's what it looks like. Let me actually punch out so we can see the full screen. But once you have the software installed, we're gonna launch it. And a note on how SoundSource works, rather than it launching like a normal application window, it launches itself into the utility bar up here. And it's behind this icon, which I know looks a lot like the volume icon, but nonetheless, that is how you access it. And what we want to do is expand the system section if it's not already expanded, and we're going to add an effect, which is going to be a headphone EQ. So once that effect is added, click select profile over here, and then we're going to select add other profile. This is basically how we import a profile that we've downloaded from Squiglink or somewhere else, right? So here's our profile. We select it. You see that it is enabled here. It's enabled here. And with those pieces in place, basically all the audio that's routed through my Mac is now going to be affected by this EQ. This is how we get system-wide PEQ, and all of the profiles that you upload are then going to be toggleable and selectable via this little drop-down menu. But I don't know, that's the basic gist of how to use SoundSource. And now finally, here's how you use Equalizer APO, which is a really popular option because it's available for Windows, it's system-wide, and importantly, it's free. Now, it is a little bit on the janky side, but once you figure it out, it's not too bad. And here's basically what you want to do. So go over here. Let me give you more of a view. Obviously, you need to install Equalizer APO. It's available on SourceForge. I'll have a link directly to where you can download it in the description down below. But once you installed it, actually before you launch it, we want to make sure our EQ profiles are in the correct spot, because Equalizer APO is particular about where you put your EQ profiles, right? So as an example, I've got my underwater EQ profile that I've downloaded over here in my downloads folder. And then where we want to put it on for Equalizer APO is we want to navigate to the hard disk, go to Program Files, go to Equalizer APO file, and look for the config folder. All right. This folder is where all of our EQ profiles need to be in order for Equalizer APO to read them. So we'll just click and drag this over into the config folder. And assuming that that worked correctly, I don't know if that worked correctly. Let me try it one more time. I'm new to this, folks. There we go. We've got our EQ file in the config folder. Once that's there properly, now we can launch Equalizer APO. And I guess a quick note also on launching Equalizer APO. When you navigate to it here via the Start menu, there's going to be a bunch of things that Equalizer APO installed. The thing that we want is the configuration editor. So now in the configuration editor, you might see a couple more things on here when you first launch it, or if you've used this UI before, there might be some other stuff. Just to note, we want to make sure that everything that we're doing in here, we're doing on the config.txt tab, all right? So we want to click this little plus icon, go to Control and Include. So basically we're adding an include to the configuration. Once we add that, it's going to give us this little new item on our config. Now we can click this little icon, which, just to highlight, is this guy. It's the, I don't know, it's like a file icon. We'll click that. That's going to launch this folder, which is where we dragged our EQ profile. So we can select our EQ profile, open that up, and that will automatically add it here. And you should see down here in the analysis pane, it's going to show you what your EQ profile looks like. Like, this is what we're expecting from this god-awful EQ profile I made. Again, apologies, it's intended to sound awful. But that's it. You should now have the EQ for this now operating system-wide. Just a couple things to double check is up here in the device section. This is where Equalizer APO is telling you what device it's affecting. If you've got multiple outputs on your PC, maybe you've got like a headphone jack on the front of your PC, a headphone jack on the back, and you've got an external DAC amp connected, they're all going to be different devices, and you want to make sure the Equalizer APO is installed for the device that you're using. Anything else to check? I guess just to highlight here that this little power on off icon is how you enable and disable your EQ profile. So if you wanted to have multiple EQ profiles for different headphones, you could add them all and just make sure that only one of them is enabled at a time, because you probably don't want to be listening to EQ profiles for multiple headphones at the same time. But yeah, that's the basic gist of how to use Equalizer APO with an external profile that we can later make on Squiglink. All right, there you have it. You are now set up and ready to start loading EQ profiles, which I'm going to show you how to make in the next episode of this video series. If you haven't already, do subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell so that YouTube can let you know when that's live. And also, if you like this content, please do hit the like button, and a reminder that HiFiGo is making waveguide videos possible. I'll be back soon with the next episode in this video series of how to EQ. I'll catch you then.
Joined with the force of reviews, we now have the tools to brave the misleading world of audio fools. Hey, this review is super, and so are you. Grab your headphones, sniff a graph, and share your thoughts in this pursuit.